This is Getting On with Life, Biblical Wisdom for Successful Christian Living. I'm Chris Field, and this topic is Choosing to Believe. Christianity is best understood as a faith, not a religion. Christians are saved by faith and are to live by faith. We are not saved by religious routines and duty. Notice what it says in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. By grace you are saved through faith. And in Romans 1:17 it says, the righteous live by faith. People can be confused about what it is to have faith, especially if their religious ideas get in the way. Religious ideas focus on doing things and doing things the right way. A religious person will focus on disciplines or religious practices, such as prayer, going to church, and so on. They will focus on external things like dress, appearance, right speech, and so on. They may even be quite strict about how those things are to be done, such as never missing a church service. A religious person may also focus on religious decorations, such as the right way to pray, the right kind of church to go to, the right things to believe, or the right use of candles, special clothes, and special services. Faith seems too simple when compared with a disciplined religion. Faith does not require any kind of form or any outward display of religion. For example, compare the sinner, the publican, and the Pharisee that Jesus told us about as recorded in Luke chapter 18. The Pharisee rejoiced that he was devout in his religion, explaining to God that he fasted 2 meals a week and gave a tenth of everything he owned. The Pharisee thought he could earn God's favour by his religious acts. The publican, however, did not rely on his own efforts at all, but simply cried out to God for mercy. We see that in Luke chapter 18, verse 13. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes to heaven, but beat his chest, saying, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. The publican had faith in God, trusting God to be able to forgive him, unworthy as he was. He cried out to God, totally relying on God's mercy. This is faith in action. Yet from outward appearance, to anyone seeing these two men leave the temple, the Pharisee would appear to be the more godly. He might be godly in action, but his heart was full of pride, and his sins were not forgiven. The publican, looking irreligious and unworthy, went away forgiven and right with God. That's told to us in Luke chapter 18, verse 14. Jesus said, I tell you, this publican went to his house justified, rather than the Pharisee. Faith is a choice to believe. Just as we can choose to be at church on time, or to set an alarm to remind us to pray, or join a Bible reading group to make sure we do regular Bible study, we can also choose to trust God. We know that faith is a choice because it is commanded. God cannot justly command us to do something outside our power. God commands us to have faith. See that in Mark 11:22. Jesus instructed the disciples, have faith in God. And in 1 John 3:23 it says, and this is God's commandment, that we believe on the name of his Son, Jesus Christ. If you have a strong religious background, such as being raised to be very diligent in a range of religious activities, like prayer, Bible reading, and church attendance, you might find yourself choking at how simple it is to be right with God, without all that religious diligence. The reality is that God makes people right with himself by them simply choosing to believe in him and to trust Christ for their salvation. That could be quite shocking to some. Imagine living in religious limitation all your life, only to find that others who did none of that were as accepted by God as you are. Worst still, imagine if they were accepted and you were rejected, such as with the Pharisee and publican. Religious people often want to impose onto new believers a series of religious do's and don'ts, rather than celebrate the new believer's faith. So let me reiterate that Christianity is best understood as a faith, not a religion. You are commanded to put your faith in Christ, trusting Christ for forgiveness, salvation, new birth, adoption into God's family, and eternal blessings in heaven. There is nothing else for you to do to get God's mercy and grace. As God's child, you will want to worship Him, read His Word, the Bible, speak with Him in prayer all the time, and serve Him by building His kingdom. But none of those things makes you more His child or gives you a better salvation. You do acts of worship out of a heart of worship, not to gain recognition from God. In my younger days, I thought that my religious acts would give me a better chance of receiving God's favour. I had an obvious black Bible, so it would be noticed when I was carrying it with me. I wanted to be on time for every church activity, as I thought that would count in God's record book. As my understanding grew, I was delighted to find that Christ has done it all for me, and I am to trust my whole self to His finished work on the cross. Sadly, many years later, I came across an elderly lady who resisted the truth of the gospel and declared, "Despite what Pastor Chris says, I believe if I do enough good things, God will accept me into heaven." How sad that someone would choose reliance on their own actions instead of choosing faith. Faith is a choice. Choose today to put your whole reliance on Christ for your salvation, knowing that your simple choice to believe is what God is looking for, and the basis for Him giving to you eternal salvation through Christ. Make sure you keep choosing to believe. God bless you.